everyone, my name is Kevin Carlson. I'm a mortgage broker here in Canada. Thank you so much for joining me on my YouTube channel to learn a little bit more about mortgage financing. Today we're talking about collection agencies and dealing with them. In my research on looking at what other people have talked about in dealing with collection agencies online and through YouTube, I found literally dozens of other YouTube videos advising people to never pay your collections. Now, granted, a lot of these are probably down in the States, and I don't know what the laws are like there, but here in Canada, not paying your collections isn't necessarily a great idea. So I thought I'd do this video and just go over dealing with collection agencies here in Canada and just to help people address these things in a proper manner. So the first question is, do you actually have to pay off your collections? The answer is no. If you never want to have a loan or a credit card or anything like that, then you don't have to pay your collections. If you don't mind some harassing phone calls and letters and that sort of thing, yeah, don't worry about it. You don't have to pay your collections. For the most part, collections and any other bad debts often fall off your credit report automatically after about 5, 6, and maybe 7 years. So besides not being able to get credit cards and loans and that sort of thing, if you have collections on your credit, there is a few other side effects that can happen if you have those things linger just sitting on your credit report. Some of those things are being able to rent a house or an apartment. Some landlords will ask to check your credit to see if you've got a decent credit history, to see if you're worth the credit risk. Sometimes if you're looking to get into a cell phone contract and you've got a device that's worth $1,000, maybe even $1,500, then you're often financing that into the cell phone contract, and sometimes they'll have a look at your credit that way and see if you're a good credit risk. There are quite a few jobs in finance and especially in government that you might be prevented from getting if you've got a little bit of spotty credit history. As a mortgage broker, I must maintain good credit history. I don't necessarily have to provide the fact that I have good credit. I have to send them my credit report, but I have to attest that I've never been through bankruptcy or a consumer proposal. If I do consider doing that, it's pretty much catastrophic for my career. I would have to let them know, the agency that licenses me here in the province, and who knows what their tactics would be if I went through bankruptcy. I'm advising people on a daily basis as to their debt, and if I trip and fall credit-wise for myself, that doesn't look real good either. So I have to keep a pretty clean credit history myself. And of course, the main thing that you can't get if you've got collections sitting in your credit report is a mortgage. It doesn't matter what sort of a collection it's for or how much it's for. If you've got something sitting on your credit and it needs to be addressed, even if you've disputed the debt itself, like you don't think that you owe it, it's going to have to be paid. Okay, so what if you do want to pay off those collections and get them off your credit report and help your credit score come back up again? Well, let's talk about that. But I'm going to ask you to watch this video all the way to the end because there are some key bits of information all the way through this video that will help you address these credit items that cannot be missed. You have to follow through all the way through the steps in this process to be able to get this stuff looked after properly. So if you found out about a collection that you have on your credit, there's really only two ways that typically happens. The first is that you received a letter from the collection agency themselves outlining that you have a collection. The second is the one that I experienced the most, that is when I pull people's credit reports and I see the collection just sitting on there. So if you apply for credit through your bank for a credit card or a loan, or you apply for financing elsewhere, or you try to rent an apartment or a house, you may find out that there might be a collection sitting in your credit report. So the first step in the process is to get copies of both of your credit reports in the mail on their way to you by both credit reporting agencies, TransUnion and Equifax. This is the best way to see if there's any other collections or any other bad credit sitting on your credit report to be sure that you can look after those at the same time. The next step in the process is to verify that this collection actually belongs to you. If you have a very common name, sometimes the collection agency will just find the first Bob Jones near where you live and maybe register that collection against that person. Now, this doesn't happen very often, but it is something that I have seen in the past. So make sure that that collection actually belongs to you. So we'll go over that. So if you've just found out through your bank or through somebody like myself as your mortgage broker about this collection, very often all that we can give you is just the name of the collection agency, sometimes a phone number, and their reference number often shows up on their credit report for the collection as well. So normally what I do is I instruct the client to call that collection agency and have a pen and paper in front of them so that they can take some notes. Once you get on the phone with the collection agency, you're going to want to get some information about them to start with. If you have their name, make sure you've got the full name of the company that you're dealing with and the address as to where their office is located. Make sure you take down the full name of the person that you're speaking to and the phone number or the extension for that person if you can get it from them. Then you're going to want to get some information about the actual collection itself. So I'm going to be talking about the different collections from what's called credit grantors. So a credit grantor is whoever gave you credit. So whoever your collection is from, that is the credit grantor. So that could be your bank, a credit card company, a cell phone company, stuff like that. So when I say credit grantor, that could be from pretty much anything. So we'll just use that term. So when you're on the phone with a collection agency, you're going to want to find out some information about the credit grantor and the credit item that you had. So find out who the collection is from, so the credit grantor itself, and when the collection was sent to them, the reference number for the collection, like for the account that you had with that credit grantor, and the amount of the collection, how much they're requesting that you pay. The next step is to contact the credit grantor and verify that this is the collection agency that you're supposed to pay and the one that they actually sent your collection to. Quite often people ask me if they can just pay the original credit grantor, like whatever, whether it was a cell phone or through a credit card. If this happened immediately, pretty much right away, then they may still have that account sitting on their system. But for the most part, if it's happened a few months ago or a year ago or more, then this account's been written off and it might not even be on their system any longer for you to be able to pay them. However, keep in mind, the collection on your credit report was put there by the collection agency, not by the original credit grantor. So you want to make sure that if you're going to pay the original credit grantor, that you can prove to the collection agency that you paid the account. This can trip people up a little bit because the collection agency, it's not really in their best interest to say that, yeah, we'll remove this from your credit report because you paid somebody else. Well, that's just a waste of time to them. They're not going to get anything out of it. So keep that in mind. The collection agency is only there to get the money from you directly. And here's another little known thing. Once you've paid the collection agent, it is not their responsibility to update your credit report to make the collection show as paid. I know it sounds ridiculous, but they're really quick and fast about putting the collection on your credit report, but they're not obligated. They don't have to go in and make any corrections. Once they've got your money, the account's closed. They don't care what happens to your file or your credit. It is your job to fix your credit on your own, and we'll go through that. Now let's go over the following steps if you've agreed to pay the collection agency as to how you need to go about it. It's not just sending them money. There is a process in order to make your credit look a lot better after this is done. Step number 1, get a paper statement from the collection agency or from the credit grantor, if that's who you're going to be paying, in the mail. You're going to have to get this as a letter or a statement directly from them, outlining how much you're going to be paying them, the account number, the reference number for the collection, and how you're to make that payment. If they offer to send you an email, tell them no. You need an actual paper statement mailed to you. Emails are too easy to fake, and when you go to fix your credit later on, you're going to want that paper statement. If you have negotiated a reduced amount to be paid, make sure that you have them outline that they will be accepting the lowered amount as full and final payment of the collection. I have had multiple clients negotiate a settlement with a collection agency, and then they make the payment, and the collection agency just took that as partial payment on the account, and then the rest is still owing after. So make sure that you have it say full and final payment on the settlement letter so that you know exactly how much you're going to be paying and that they'll accept it as full and final payment. Once you receive this letter, make 2 copies and put one of them away where you can find it years down the road. This might seem a bit excessive, but you're going to see why here in a few minutes. Step 2, pay the collection. For the most part, they'll give you a few options in order to make the payment on the collection, and the best one is to actually go to your bank and make it right inside the branch with a teller. So bring that letter with you and go to the teller and make the payment. Make the payment in full and have the teller stamp the letter that you paid it, and it'll say the name of the bank and the date that you paid. The teller will also give you a receipt showing the amount that you paid on that date. These 2 documents are what you need in order to get the collections removed from both Equifax and TransUnion. You need to hang on to both of these documents for at least 10 years. Put them in a very safe place and hang on to them. And there's a really good reason why. Some credit grantors will send your collection account to multiple collection agencies. So once you've paid a collection agency and you've done all this work to get it taken off your credit report, it might show up again from another collection agency. And the only way that you can prove to Equifax and TransUnion that you've already paid that collection is if you have these two documents. The finance and credit industry even has a cutesy term for these secondary collections coming up, and it's called zombie debt because it comes back to life. Step 3, updating your credit report. Now, since the collection agency is not about to do it, you're going to have to update your credit report yourself to make sure that those collections read as a zero balance or settled and paid. I'll put links in the description below how you can contact both Equifax and TransUnion and get in touch with them to make sure that they can get copies of these two documents so that they can update your credit report. Once they've received those two documents, and there might be some other supporting documentation you have to send along, maybe a local utility bill for your address where you live. And once you've done that, it can take anywhere from a week or so to maybe a few weeks or a month or two for them to update your credit report and change that collection from a balance owing to being paid or settled. One thing I haven't touched on is a credit dispute. So a credit dispute is something that you don't feel like it's your collection or your bad debt, and you're in dispute with the credit grantor. Well, that can be a bit of a problematic process. If it's for thousands of dollars, well, it could be worthwhile to fight it. What you need to do is to contact the original credit grantor and work things out with them and prove the fact that that debt was not yours and get them to either reverse the collection or cancel the collection. Once they've done that, you will need some documentation showing that they have either forgiven or canceled the collection, and you'll have to send those into the credit reporting agencies just like the other ones, just to get those removed off your credit. As you might guess, that is a little bit of a long and arduous process, but if you're not in any hurry to get these things looked after, there's certainly nothing wrong with going through the motions to try to get those things rectified. That's about all we have for dealing with collection agencies. It's not a very fun process, and keep in mind that these people are professional harassers. That's their job, is to get money out of people. So it's not a real fun job doing it every day. I don't think people who work in these call centers at the collection agencies last very long. And if you do, I don't know, you've got a little more of a hard soul than I do. So make sure that you try to act professional when you're dealing with these folks, but keep in mind that they can be nasty to deal with, and if that's the case, you can launch complaints, and I'll put links to the federal government. They've actually got some guidelines as to collection agencies and what they can do. If the collection agency is contacting your employer or friends or family members, that's absolutely not proper. It can't be done. So you can absolutely launch an investigation or a complaint against that collection agency, because that's not right. If you have any questions about collection agencies or dealing with them, certainly put them in the comments below. If you've had a bad experience with a collection agent, maybe tell your story, tell what some of the nasty things that some of these collection agencies have done. Be interesting and entertaining to read about maybe some stories that people might have about that. Once again, thank you for joining me on my YouTube channel and learning a little bit more about collection agencies and dealing with them. Have yourself a great day.